Civil rights compliance and enforcement training. Here's our agenda. Definitions, overview of important terminology, background, where did our current laws originate from, civil rights components, description of the components and why they are important to civil rights, non-discrimination statements, requirements for when and where the non-discrimination statements must be used, and then we'll discuss scenarios. We will go through some possible scenarios that you could encounter. Here's some definitions. Definition for discrimination reads, the act of distinguishing one person or group of persons from others, either intentionally, by neglect, or by the effect of actions or lack of actions based on their protected basis. Definition for disability reads, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more of an individual's major life activities, having a record of such impairments or being regarded as having such an impairment. And the final definition is protected class. Any person or group of people who have characteristics for which discrimination is prohibited based on a law, regulations, or executive order. Protected classes for the protected classes for child nutrition programs includes race, sex, color, national origin, age, or disability. Background. Where did our current laws originate? Title VI, Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. Title IX of Education Amendments of 1972 prohibits discrimination based on sex under any educational program or activity that is receiving federal financial assistance. And Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 prohibits discrimination based on a disability. Backgrounds. Where did our current laws come from? Americans with Disability Act of 1990 prohibits discrimination based on a disability. Age Discrimination Act of 1975 prohibits discrimination based on an age in programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. Civil Rights Restoration Act of 1987 clarifies the intent of Congress as it relates to the scope of Title VI of Civil Rights Act of 1964 and related non-discrimination statutes to ensure non-discrimination in all programs and activities of a recipient, whether those programs and activities are federally funded or not. Civil rights training components. We're going to talk about assurances, data collection and analysis, public notification, outreach and education, limited English proficiencies, compliance reviews, processing civil rights complaints, resolutions of non-compliance, reasonable notifications, conflict resolutions, and customer service. So let's get started. What are assurances? Contractual agreements in which a state agency, local agency, or the sub-recipient legally agrees to administer food and nutrition services, FNS, programs in accordance with all laws, regulations, instructions, policies, and guidelines related to non-discrimination. Compliance with these requirements is verified through compelling data, maintaining records, and submitting required reports. Data collections and reporting. A system must be in place for the collection of racial and ethnic data. Self is identified the reference method for collecting racial and ethnic data. For example, the household eligibility application requests these informations, but is not required to be provided. Why does CPS have to complete racial and ethnic data? The data is used to determine how effectively our program is reaching potentially eligible children and where outreach may be needed. Data collections and reporting. It is required that ethnicity must be collected first and race second. Ethnicity categories include Hispanic or Latino, not Hispanic or Latino. Race categories include American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, or white. Public notification. The purpose: to inform applicants, participants, and potentially eligible persons of the program eligibility, program rights and responsibilities, the policy of non-discrimination, and the procedures for filing a complaint. And those are program eligibility, complaint information, and non-discrimination statements. The Illinois State Board of Education submits a statewide public announcement on behalf of all participating sponsors annually. However, local education agencies, LEAs, must submit public announcement to local employment offices and major employer contemplating large layoffs in the attendance area of the school. Outreach and education. The non-discrimination statement must be included on all materials that mention the USDA programs, including websites. However, you do not need to include the statement on your menus. Outreach and education are important because you want to reach as many potential students as possible, many of whom need our services. You want to ensure full program access. You need to pay attention to underrepresented groups. You need to ensure information is available in other languages as needed. Outreach and education. And Justice for All poster. Prominently display this poster in the food service area so it is visible to participants. This includes the lunchroom, hallways, gym, etc. If you need any additional posters, please contact your operation specialist or your FSM food service managers. Limited English Proficiencies, LEP. This means individuals who do not speak English as their primary language and have a limited ability to read, speak, write, or understand English. Recipients of federal financial assistance have a responsibility to take reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to their programs and activities by persons with LEP. Compliance reviews. Compliance reviews are used to determine that the applicant or recipient of federal financial assistance is in compliance with civil rights requirements. Pre-approved reviews take place before the sponsor is approved for operation. This would be for new applicants to our program. Post-award reviews. This takes place after a sponsor is approved for operations. An example would be during an administrative review. And special reviews takes place after a site has been approved due to the applicant data collection or as follow-ups to previous non-compliance. Processing civil rights complaints. Where can civil rights complaints be submitted? All complaints alleging discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, sex, or disability, either written or verbal, must be processed within the time frame established by departmental regulations and agreements. Complainants may choose to contact Freddie Vanilla at 773-553-2908 or at his email at fdbonilla@cps.edu, or contact the USDA directly, or contact the state agency directly, or notify the SFA or institution of their complaint. Resolution of non-compliance. Non-compliance is finding a non-compliance may be the result of a routine review, a special review, an investigation. Non-compliance is a factual finding that any CR requirement as provided by law, regulations, policy, instruction, or guidelines is not being adhered to. Achieving voluntary compliance. Once non-compliance is determined, steps must be taken immediately to obtain voluntary compliance. Termination or suspension of assistance. As a last resort, if voluntary compliance is not completed within the allotted time period, termination or suspension of assistance may result. Reasonable modification. Ensure access for people with disabilities. As programs and offices modernize, it is imperative that websites, including state and local agency websites and online applicant systems, are readily accessible to and usable by persons with visual impairment and other disabilities. In addition, programs must ensure physical accessibility for buildings and facilities, particularly to persons in wheelchairs and with mobility disabilities. At times, different or special treatments may actually be necessary in order to ensure effective aids, benefits, and service are reasonable. There is also an obligation to ensure that members of the public are provided accommodations in order to access program information, applications, and assistance, which include braille, large print, and audio. Conflict resolutions. In no way are we to impede a customer's right to file a civil rights complaint. However, most complaints are easily resolved by using appropriate tools. Conflict resolution consists of useful skills to assist with the resolution of complaints. the solution of complaints. These skills include using a win-win approach, change the conflict from an attack or an defense to cooperate and avoid the desire to blame. Use a creative response. Turn problems into possibilities to improve the situation. Demonstrate empathy. Help others feel that they are understood by being an active listener. Appropriate assertiveness. State your case without arousing the defense or another person. Remember to use I sometimes to communicate your feelings directly. Manage emotions. Stick strictly to the fact of a complaint and communicate your feelings directly. Have a willingness to resolve, identify barriers to a resolution, and overcome those barriers. Avoid repeating the situation. And finally, customer service. All participants must be treated in the same manner, which includes seating arrangements, serving lines, offering the same food choices to all students, not denying a child a meal for any reason, inviting all children to participate in the meal service, and preparing food substitutions for students with disabilities. Non-discrimination statements. In accordance with the federal civil rights law and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, civil rights regulations and policies, the USDA, its agencies, offices, and employees and institutions participating in or administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating based on the race, color, national origin, sex, disability, age, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity in any program or activities conducted or funded by USDA. Persons with disabilities who require alternative means of communication for program information should contact the agency, state and local, where they applied for benefits. Individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have speech disability may contact USDA through the Federal Relay Service at 1-800-877-8339. Additionally, program information may be made available in language other than English. To file a program complaint of discrimination, complete the USDA Program Discrimination Complaint Form, which is found online at the address below, and any USDA office or written letter addressed to USDA and provide the letter all of the information required in the form. To request a copy of the complaint form, call 1-866-632-9992. Submit your complaints, forms, or letters to USDA by mail, fax, or email.